Imagine Philadelphia, 1776. The air crackles with the hushed whispers of revolution. Cobblestone streets, slick with a recent rain, reflect the flickering gas lamps. Inside a small, unassuming upholstery shop on Arch Street, candlelight dances across walls lined with fabric and thread. A lone figure works late into the night, her needle flashing in the dim light. This is the world of Betsy Ross, a world on the brink of creating a new nation. We've all heard the story, right? The tale of how General George Washington himself, along with 2 other signers of the Declaration of Independence, walked into Betsy's shop with a rough sketch of a flag for a country that didn't even officially exist yet. It's a story woven into the very fabric of American identity. The image of Betsy Ross, patriot seamstress, presenting the first stars and stripes to the founding fathers, is as iconic as the flag itself. It's a cornerstone of American folklore, a symbol of humble, determined patriotism. We see it in paintings, in school plays, in our history books. It feels as real as the Liberty Bells crack. But have you ever stopped to wonder, is it true? Did one woman, with a needle and thread, truly sew the very first flag of the United States of America? Or is this beloved story just that, a story? A comforting myth passed down through generations, embellished and polished over time. The truth, as it often is far more complex, more mysterious, and frankly, more fascinating than the simple tale we've all been told. To unravel this mystery, we have to travel back in time, not just to the smoky rooms where independence was being debated, but into the life of the woman at the center of it all, Elizabeth Griscom Ross. Who was she, really? Before she was a legendary flagmaker, she was a daughter, a wife, a business owner, and a woman who had already known her fair share of love and loss. She was an upholsterer by trade, a skilled artisan known for her meticulous work. This wasn't just a hobby. It was her livelihood, a craft she ran with her husband, John Ross. Their life together, however, was tragically short. The stirrings of war were not just a political debate for them. They were a harsh reality. John Ross, a member of the local militia, was on guard duty along the Delaware River when an explosion at a munitions depot mortally wounded him. Betsy was left a widow at just 24 years old, in the midst of a city teetering on the edge of war. She was alone, running a business and trying to survive in a world turned upside down. This is the Betsy we need to understand, not the serene figure in a painting, but a resilient young woman facing an uncertain future. It's within this context of personal grief and national upheaval that the legendary meeting supposedly took place. The story goes that in late May or early June of 1776, George Washington, Robert Morris, and George Ross, who was the uncle of Betsy's late husband, paid her a visit. They brought a design for a new national flag. The design featured 13 six-pointed stars. According to the legend, Betsy, with her keen eye for design, suggested a small but significant change. She demonstrated how a 5-pointed star was not only more aesthetically pleasing, but also much easier and faster to cut from a single fold of cloth. She allegedly folded a piece of paper and, with a single snip of her scissors, produced a perfect 5-pointed star, impressing the committee. This detail is the heart of the story, isn't it? It elevates Betsy from a mere seamstress to a contributor, a collaborator in the creation of a national symbol. It paints a picture of a practical, clever woman who wasn't just following orders, but actively shaping the design of the stars and stripes. The committee was supposedly so taken with her skill and suggestion that they commissioned her to sew the first flag right then and there. It's a powerful and compelling image. But here's where the historical record gets quiet. In fact, it's completely silent. There are no official government records, no letters, no diary entries from George Washington, Robert Morris, or anyone else from that time that mentioned this meeting with Betsy Ross. There are no receipts, no bills of sale for a flag made in 1776. For a moment of such supposed historical significance, the lack of any contemporary evidence is deafening. So, if it didn't happen, or if we can't prove it happened, where did this incredibly detailed and enduring story come from? The answer to that question doesn't appear for another 100 years. The story of Betsy Ross and the first flag didn't enter the public consciousness until 1870. That is when her grandson, William Canby, presented a paper to the Historical Society of Pennsylvania. In it, he recounted the story as he had heard it from his grandmother and other family members. He presented sworn affidavits from his aunt and cousin, who also claimed to have heard the story directly from Betsy herself. According to Canby, Betsy told this story to her children and grandchildren as a piece of private family history. She was a humble Quaker woman and didn't seek public recognition for her role. It was a cherished memory, a secret pride she held close. It was only after her death that the family decided her contribution to the nation's birth should be known. So, the source of this entire, legendary event rests almost entirely on the oral tradition of one family, passed down and finally revealed a century after it supposedly occurred. This is the great dilemma for historians. Do we dismiss it as a tall tale, a family myth that got out of hand? Or do we accept that some truths exist outside of official documents, in the stories people tell their children? There are some plausible elements. Betsy Ross was a real person, an upholsterer who did sew flags for the Pennsylvania Navy. Her shop was in the right place at the right time. George Ross, one of the men in the alleged flag committee, was indeed the uncle of her late husband, providing a personal connection. And George Washington was in Philadelphia at that time and was concerned with outfitting the Continental Army. So, the pieces are there, but they don't quite fit together into a neat, verifiable picture. The flag that the Continental Congress officially adopted in 1777, known as the Flag Resolution, simply stated that the flag should have 13 stripes, alternate red and white, and 13 stars, white in a blue field, representing a new constellation. It didn't specify the arrangement of the stars, nor the number of points they should have. This led to a wide variety of flag designs in the early years of the Republic. Could one of them have been made by Betsy Ross? It's certainly possible. Is it possible she met with a committee and influenced the design? Again, possible. But the story as we know it, with George Washington and the single snip star, relies solely on faith in her family's memory. It's a classic case of historical legend versus historical fact. And so, we're left with a mystery. A beautiful, patriotic story that has inspired millions, but one that stands on a foundation of memory rather than written proof. But perhaps, in the end, that's what makes the story of Betsy Ross so powerful. It's not just about who sewed the first flag. It's about the idea that an ordinary citizen, a widowed craftswoman, could play a crucial role in an extraordinary moment in history. Whether fact or folklore, her story represents the spirit of the American Revolution, story of everyday people doing remarkable things. What do you think? Do you believe the legend of Betsy Ross? Let us know in the comments below. As we continue to explore the birth of the nation, we'll find that history is filled with these fascinating gray areas where myth and reality blur. Thanks for joining us on this journey back in time. If you enjoyed this video, please give it a like. And don't forget to subscribe and hit that notification bell so you don't miss our next chapter. Welcome back to our journey through American history. Today, we're stepping into Chapter 2. A seamstress in revolutionary times. Let's travel back to the 18th century, to the vibrant, bustling streets of colonial Philadelphia. Imagine the clip-clop of horses on cobblestone, the lively chatter of merchants, and the steady hum of workshops where the future of a nation was being crafted, piece by piece. In the heart of this thriving city, a young woman named Elizabeth Griscom was making a name for herself. We know her today as Betsy Ross. But back then she was a determined and highly skilled apprentice. Born in 1752 into a large Quaker family, Betsy was the eighth of 17 children. From a young age, she showed a remarkable talent for needlework. Her fingers didn't just sew, they danced across fabric, turning simple cloth into works of art. Philadelphia at that time was the largest city in the American colonies, a true melting pot of ideas, cultures, and commerce. It was the epicenter of revolutionary fervor, a place where whispers of independence grew into resounding calls for freedom. Amidst the grand Georgian townhouses and the political debates heating up in Independence Hall, there were the humble workshops of artisans like Betsy. These were the spaces where the real, tangible work of the city happened. The air would have been thick with the scent of sawdust, tanned leather, and freshly dyed textiles. Betsy's father was a house carpenter, and she was expected to learn a trade. While many young women learned basic sewing at home, Betsy's skills were exceptional. So, her father arranged for her to apprentice with an upholsterer named John Webster. This was a significant step. Upholstery in the 18th century was a physically demanding and respected trade, dominated by men. It involved not just sewing, but also working with wood, tacks, and heavy fabrics to create intricate furniture. Under Webster's guidance, Betsy mastered her craft. She learned to create everything from elegant window draperies to complex chair coverings and even mattresses. Her workshop would have been a hive of activity. Picture bolts of damask, brocade, and chintz piled high. The rhythmic sound of her needle, the sharp snip of her scissors. This was the soundtrack of her life. She was known for her meticulous attention to detail and her ability to create the most intricate patterns. Her stitches were so precise, so perfect, that her reputation as one of the finest seamstresses in Philadelphia began to grow. It was during her apprenticeship that she met another apprentice, a fellow upholsterer named John Ross. He was the son of an Episcopal assistant rector, and there was an immediate spark between them. However, their love story was not a simple one. Betsy was a Quaker, and the Quakers had strict rules against marrying outside their faith. But Betsy was a woman of conviction, not just with her needle, but with her heart. In 1773, at the age of 21, Betsy made a life-altering decision. She and John Ross eloped, crossing the Delaware River to New Jersey to be married. This act had immediate consequences. For marrying outside her faith, she was read out of the Quaker meeting, effectively disowned by her community and, for a time, her family. It was a tremendous personal sacrifice, one that showed her independent and rebellious spirit, a spirit that mirrored the growing revolutionary mood of the colonies. After their marriage, Betsy and John took a leap of faith and started their own upholstery business. They opened a little shop on Arch Street, right in the thick of Philadelphia's artisan district. This wasn't just a workshop, it was their home and their dream. They worked side by side, combining their skills to build a life together. Betsy's nimble fingers and keen eye for design, paired with John's own craftsmanship, made their business a success. They catered to the city's elite, creating beautiful interiors for the finest homes in Philadelphia. Life was challenging, but full of promise. Betsy was now a business owner, a wife, and a respected artisan in a city on the verge of monumental change. She was no longer just Elizabeth Griscom, the Quaker girl. She was Mrs. Betsy Ross, a master of her trade, standing on her own 2 feet in a world that was rapidly transforming. Her humble beginnings and her dedication to her craft had set the stage for an extraordinary role she was yet to play. She was a woman of skill and courage, living and working just a few blocks away from where the Declaration of Independence would soon be signed. The revolutionary spirit wasn't just something happening in the halls of government. It was alive in the workshops and homes of people like Betsy. Every stitch she made, every piece of furniture she upholstered, was part of the fabric of this new, emerging American identity. She was an everyday person, a craftswoman, whose life was about to intersect with history in a way she could never have imagined. Her little shop on Arch Street was about to become the birthplace of a legend. This chapter of her life, as a young, skilled seamstress building her own way in a revolutionary city, is crucial to understanding the woman she became. It wasn't just about one flag, it was about a lifetime of skill, resilience, and quiet determination. She was a true artisan of the revolution, a testament to the idea that great historical moments are often shaped by the steady, dedicated hands of ordinary people. Thank you so much for joining me for this chapter. The story is just getting started, and the revolution is coming. If you enjoyed this glimpse into colonial Philadelphia and the life of young Betsy Ross, please give this video a thumbs up and subscribe to the channel so you and miss what happens next. We love having you as part of our community. Until next time, stay curious. Hey everyone, and welcome back. When you hear the name Betsy Ross, what's the first thing that pops into your head? For most of us, it's that iconic image of her, needle in hand, presenting the very first American flag to George Washington. It's a powerful, legendary moment. But have you ever wondered about the woman asterisk? Behind asterisk, the legend. Who was she before that fateful meeting? What shaped her into the skilled artisan and determined patriot we remember today? Well, That's exactly what we're going to explore. Let's rewind the clock and uncover the incredible life of Betsy Ross. Asterisk. Before asterisk. The Revolution. Betsy, or Elizabeth Griscom, as she was born, entered the world on January 1st, 1752, right here in Philadelphia. She was the 8th of 17 children. Can you even imagine? Her family was part of the Quaker community, also known as the Society of Friends. Now, being a Quaker in the 18th century wasn't just about a style of worship. It was a complete way of life that deeply influenced Betsy's upbringing. Quakers valued simplicity, equality, and hard work. They believed in the inner light, the idea that everyone, man or woman, had a direct connection to the divine. This belief fostered a sense of independence and self-reliance in Quaker women that was quite unusual for the time. They were encouraged to be educated, to speak their minds in meetings, and to learn practical skills. So, from a very young age, Betsy wasn't just taught domestic chores. She was raised in an environment that valued her mind and her abilities. Her father, Samuel Griscom, was a successful house carpenter, and this trade-focused environment likely exposed Betsy to the world of craftsmanship early on. But it was in another skill that she truly excelled: needlework. In Quaker society, sewing wasn't just a hobby. It was an art form and a vital skill. Young girls learned intricate stitching techniques, and Betsy was a natural. She had an eye for detail and a steady hand. Her talent was so obvious that when it came time for her to learn a trade, the path was clear. At a young age, probably in her early teens, Betsy was apprenticed to a man named William Webster, a popular local upholsterer. This wasn't just a casual arrangement. An apprenticeship was a formal, multi-year contract. She would have lived and worked in Webster's shop, learning every facet of the upholstery trade from the ground up. Think about what that involved. It was far more than just sewing pretty pillows. She learned to work with all kinds of fabrics, from heavy wools and canvases to delicate silks. She learned to make and repair curtains, bed covers, and tablecloths. But most importantly, she learned the complex and physically demanding craft of furniture upholstery, stretching fabric, tufting buttons, and creating elegant pieces for the finest homes in Philadelphia. It was here, amidst the rolls of fabric and the scent of sawdust, that Betsy honed the exceptional skills that would later make her famous. It was also where her life would take a very unexpected and romantic turn. Working alongside her in William Webster's shop was another apprentice, a young man named John Ross. John was the son of an Episcopal assistant rector, so he came from a very different religious background than Betsy. Despite their different upbringings, a connection sparked between them. They shared a passion for their craft, and, as it turned out, for each other. They fell in love. Now, in the 1770s, this was a serious problem. Betsy's Quaker community strictly forbade marrying out of unity, meaning marrying someone outside the Quaker faith. Doing so meant facing severe consequences. The community would disown you, effectively cutting you off from your family, your friends, and the entire social and spiritual structure you'd known your whole life. Betsy was faced with an impossible choice: the faith and family she had always known, or the man she loved. In a move that demonstrated the independent and determined spirit she was known for, she chose love. In November of 1773, 21-year-old Betsy and John Ross eloped. They rowed across the Delaware River to New Jersey and were married in a tavern. As predicted, when the news reached her Quaker meeting, Betsy was promptly read out of the community. It must have been a painful and isolating experience, but she stood by her decision. She joined the Episcopal Church with John, embracing her new life with him. With their apprenticeships complete, the talented young couple decided to put their shared skills to use. In 1774, they took a leap of faith and opened their very own upholstery business. They rented a small house on Arch Street, a house that you can still visit today, known as the Betsy Ross House. Starting a business from scratch was a huge risk. Philadelphia was a competitive city, filled with established artisans. But John and Betsy had talent, ambition, and a shared dream. They worked side by side, combining their skills to create and repair items for the homes and businesses of colonial Philadelphia. He might have handled the woodworking and frame construction, while she managed the intricate fabric work. They were a true partnership in life and in business. Life was looking bright for the young couple. They were building their business, making a name for themselves, and starting their life together in a city that was buzzing with new ideas. But as they stitched and sewed, the political threads of their world were starting to unravel. Tensions between the American colonies and Great Britain were rising. The air in Philadelphia was thick with talk of liberty, tyranny, and independence. Little did Betsy and John know that their small upholstery shop on Arch Street was about to be placed right at the heart of a revolution, and that Betsy as needle and thread would soon be called upon for a task far greater than any upholstery job she could have ever imagined. Her Quaker upbringing gave her a strong moral compass and a belief in equality. Her apprenticeship gave her unparalleled skill, and her marriage to John Ross set her on a new path, one that would lead her directly into the center of the fight for American independence. Thanks so much for watching this deep dive into Betsy Ross's early life. It's just amazing to see how all these pieces came together to create the woman who would become a national icon. If you enjoyed this, please hit that like button, and be sure to subscribe and turn on notifications so you don't miss our next chapter, where things really start to heat up. We'll see you next time. Imagine this. You're young, you're in love, and you've built a life and a business with the person you adore, all against the backdrop of a brewing revolution. That was Betsy Ross's world. She and John had defied their families and their faiths to be together, and that little upholstery shop on Arch Street was a testament to their shared dream. Life was a whirlwind of stitching, planning, and whispered hopes for the future, all while the colonies rumbled with talk of independence. But the drums of war beat louder every day. For John, staying on the sidelines wasn't an option. He felt the pull of duty, the undeniable call to fight for the ideals he and Betsy held so dear. He joined the local Pennsylvania militia, a decision filled with both pride and a heavy sense of foreboding. Every time he put on that uniform, a shadow of worry must have crossed Betsy's heart. Their days became a mixture of ordinary life and extraordinary tension. Betsy would manage the shop, her hands busy with fabrics and threads, while her mind was miles away with John, on patrol, on guard, in harm's way. They wrote letters, I'm sure, filled with reassurances and declarations of love, each one a precious connection in a world being torn apart. These weren't just soldiers, they were husbands, sons, and neighbors. The year was 1776, a year that would become legendary for the Declaration of Independence, a year of bold new beginnings. But for Betsy, it would become the year her world shattered. The exact details are lost to the haze of history, but the outcome is tragically clear. While on guard duty one fateful night, there was an explosion at a munitions depot on the Philadelphia waterfront. John was there. He was severely injured in the blast. Can you even fathom the news reaching Betsy? The frantic rush, the desperate prayers. For days, she would have sat by his side, holding his hand, tending to his wounds, willing him to live with every fiber of her being. But his injuries were too great. John Ross died in January of 1776. Who's like that? At only 24 years old. Betsy was a widow. The love she had fought for, the man who was her partner in every sense of the word, was gone. The dream they had built together suddenly felt hollow, the future a vast and terrifying unknown. The city of Philadelphia was buzzing with the energy of revolution. But for Betsy, a profound and personal silence had fallen. She was now a woman alone in a time of immense uncertainty and danger. The war wasn't some distant political debate. It had come to her doorstep and ripped her life apart. She had no husband, no children, and her own family was still estranged from her because of her marriage to John. The grief must have been a physical weight, a constant ache in her chest. Many women in her position might have crumbled. They might have closed the shop, sought refuge with distant relatives, and disappeared into the footnotes of history. But that wasn't Betsy. Grief is a powerful, transformative force. For some, it breaks them. For others, it forges them into something stronger, something more resilient than they ever thought possible. Betsy had to make a choice. Would she let this tragedy define her and extinguish her spirit? Or would she find a way to carry on, not just for herself, but for the memory of the man she loved and the ideals he had died for? She stood at a crossroads, a young widow in a nation fighting for its own birth. With her needle and thread, the very tools of the trade she and John had built, Betsy would begin to stitch her life back together. She kept the upholstery business running, a defiant act of survival in itself. Her skill was her only asset, her reputation her only shield. She had to become not just a craftswoman, but a businesswoman, a negotiator, a survivor. This period of profound loss is crucial to understanding the woman she became. It is in this crucible of grief and war that the quiet upholsterer began to transform into a figure of quiet strength and patriotic resolve. The war had taken everything from her, but it would also, in a strange twist of fate, give her a new purpose. Her personal tragedy was about to intersect with the grand, sweeping drama of American history in a way no one, least of all Betsy herself, could have ever predicted. The stage was set for a new chapter, one that would cement her name in the story of the nation. Thank you for joining me on this deeply personal part of Betsy Ross's story. It's important to remember the human cost behind the historical dates and events. If you found this chapter meaningful, please like this video and subscribe to the channel for more. We'll see you next time as we explore what came next for the young widow in the heart of the American Revolution. Hello, history buffs and story lovers, and welcome back to our deep dive into the life of Betsy Ross. We've followed her journey from a determined young apprentice to a grieving widow and a budding businesswoman. Now, we arrive at the most famous and most debated chapter of her life. This is the story of a secret meeting that would forever link her name to the American flag. The year is 1776. The air in Philadelphia is thick with rebellion and revolution. According to the legend, passed down through the Ross family for generations, a clandestine meeting took place in Betsy's small upholstery shop on Art Street. One late spring day, 3 of the most influential men in the colonies walked through her door. First, there was General George Washington himself, the commander-in-chief of the Continental Army, a man whose presence commanded respect and whose shoulders bore the weight of a fledgling nation. Imagine the sight of him, tall and imposing, ducking slightly to enter her modest shop. Alongside him was Robert Morris, a wealthy and powerful Philadelphia merchant. Known as the financier of the Revolution, Maurice's backing was crucial to the war effort. His involvement meant this wasn't just a casual visit. This was serious business. And finally, there was George Ross, a respected Pennsylvania delegate to the Continental Congress, a signer of the Declaration of Independence, and, most importantly to our story, the uncle of Betsy's late husband, John Ross. It was likely George Ross who vouched for Betsy's skill and discretion, bringing this high-powered committee to her door. So, why were they here? What business did these architects of a new nation have with a 24-year-old seamstress? They came with a task of monumental importance. The colonies, on the brink of declaring full independence from Great Britain, needed a symbol to rally behind. They needed a flag, a standard that would represent not a collection of separate colonies, but one unified nation, the United States of America. According to the story told by Betsy's grandson, William Canby, the men brought with them a rough sketch. It was a design for a national flag, a concept born from the debates and discussions happening in the halls of the Continental Congress. The sketch depicted a field of alternating red and white stripes, 13 of them, to represent the 13 colonies. In the upper left corner, the canton, was a field of blue, dotted with 13 stars, also representing the colonies. The design was there, but it wasn't perfect. Washington, unfolding the paper, showed Betsy the concept. The stars in their sketch were This might seem like a small detail, but in the world of vexillology though, study of flagsan in the practical world of sewing, it made a difference. This is where Betsy Ross, the skilled artisan, stepped forward. She wasn't just a passive seamstress waiting for instructions. She was a craftswoman with an eye for design and a practical understanding of her trade. She looked at the 6-pointed star and, with the confidence of an expert, made a suggestion. She pointed out that a 6-pointed star was more difficult and time-consuming to cut, and so consistent. A 5-pointed star, she argued, was not only more aesthetically pleasing, but also far more practical. She claimed she could demonstrate how to make one with a single snip of her scissors. The men were skeptical. How could a perfect 5-pointed star be made with just one cut? According to the legend, Betsy took a piece of paper, folded it with a few deft and practiced moves, and with one swift clip of her shears, produced a perfectly symmetrical, 5-pointed star. The committee was impressed. Washington, a practical man himself, immediately saw the wisdom in her suggestion. It was a small change, but a significant one. It was a moment where the practical craft of an artisan influenced the symbolic design of a nation. Her suggestion was accepted. The 6-pointed stars were out, and the 5-pointed stars, the Betsy Ross stars, were in. This story, first made public by William Canby in 1870, is the heart of the Betsy Ross legend. It paints a picture of a capable, confident woman contributing directly to the creation of America's most cherished symbol. Now, it's crucial to acknowledge that historians have debated this story for over a century. There is no official government record, no diary entry from Washington, no receipt from that era to definitively prove this meeting took place exactly as described. The Flag Committee itself is a subject of historical debate. Skeptics argue that the story is a piece of family folklore that grew over time, a charming but unproven tale. They point to the fact that there were many flag makers in Philadelphia and that several flag designs were in use by the Continental Army and Navy during that period. The first official Flag Act, passed by Congress on June 14, 1777, simply stated, resolved, that the flag of the 13 United States be 13 stripes, alternate red and white, that the Union be 13 stars, white in a blue field, representing a new constellation. It didn't specify the arrangement of the stars or the number of points. However, proponents of the story point to compelling circumstantial evidence. We know Betsy Ross was a flag maker for the Pennsylvania State Navy Board. We have a receipt showing a large payment to her for making ship's colors. We know she was acquainted with George Ross. Her shop was located centrally in Philadelphia, a hub of revolutionary activity. Whether the meeting happened precisely as her grandson told it, with Washington himself at her shop, or whether her contribution was more informal, the story resonates for a reason. It captures a powerful idea that the American Revolution wasn't just fought by generals and politicians. It was built by everyday people, artisans, merchants, men, and women who used their skills to forge a new nation. Betsy's suggested change from a 6-pointed to a 5-pointed star is symbolic. It represents innovation, practicality, and the idea that even a seemingly small contribution can have a lasting impact. It elevates Betsy from a simple laborer to a creative contributor, a consultant on the nation's brand identity. So, as we stand at this pivotal moment in her life, we're left with a powerful narrative, a story of a secret meeting where the fate of a flag and a piece of American identity was decided not in a grand hall of government, but in the humble workshop of a skilled and clever woman. What do you think? Do you believe the story of the secret meeting? Does it matter if it's fact or folklore? Let me know your thoughts in the comments below. And be sure to join us for our next chapter, where we'll explore the aftermath of this legendary meeting and how Betsy's life and business continued to intertwine with the birth of the United States. Thank you so much for watching. If you're enjoying this journey into American history, please give this video a thumbs up. Subscribe to the channel and hit that notification bell so you don't miss a single chapter. We'll see you next time. Have you ever tried to draw a perfect 5-pointed star? It's not as easy as it looks, right? Getting all the points even, all the lines straight. It can be a real headache. Well, what if I told you there's a trick, a simple fold, and a single snip of the scissors that can give you a perfect star every time? This isn't just some modern life hack. It's a story woven into the very fabric of American history, a tale of ingenuity, practicality, and a Philadelphia upholsterer named Betsy Ross. Welcome back to our journey through the birth of the American flag. Today, we're diving into Chapter 6, the 5-pointed star story. This is perhaps the most famous and charming anecdote associated with Betsy Ross, and it perfectly illustrates her clever and confident character. So, let's set the scene. Imagine it's late May or early June of 1776. The air in Philadelphia is thick with the buzz of revolution. Independence is no longer a whisper. It's a roaring debate in the halls of the Pennsylvania State House, what we now call Independence Hall. A secret committee, composed of none other than General George Washington, Robert Morris, and George Ross, has just paid a visit to the upholstery shop of a young widow, Betsy Ross, on Arch Street. They've come with a special, top-secret request. to create the first flag for the new nation they hoped to form. They brought with them a rough sketch. It features 13 stripes, alternating red and white, and a blue field, or canton, in the corner. But on that blue field, their design called for 13 six-pointed stars. Now, Betsy, a skilled artisan with a keen eye for design and proportion, looked at the sketch. According to the legend, passed down through her family for generations, she offered some practical and aesthetic suggestions. She proposed arranging the stars in a circle, symbolizing the equality of the new states, no state above another. She also pointed out that the flag's proportions would look better if they were adjusted. The committee was impressed by her insight. But then came the detail of the stars themselves. The sketch showed 6-pointed stars. Why 6 points? Well, it's easier to make a 6-pointed star. You can create it by simply overlapping 2 equilateral triangles. It's a straightforward, logical design. But Betsy had a different idea. She advocated for a 5-pointed star. From an aesthetic standpoint, a 5-pointed star is cleaner, more elegant, and was already a common symbol in European heraldry, often representing divine guidance or nobility. It felt more stellar. General Washington, ever the practical military man, was reportedly a bit skeptical. He agreed that a 5-pointed star might look better, but he argued that a 6-pointed star would be much easier and faster for seamstresses to produce in large quantities. Remember, they weren't just making one ceremonial flag. They needed to outfit an entire army and navy. Speed and efficiency were critical. The thought of sewing dozens, maybe hundreds, of complex 5-pointed stars onto flags seemed like a logistical nightmare. This is where the story takes its brilliant turn. Betsy listened to the general's concerns. She didn't argue. She didn't debate. Instead, she demonstrated with the confidence of a master craftsperson. She reportedly said something to the effect of, "Gentlemen, let me show you how simple it can be." She picked up a piece of paper, or perhaps a scrap of cloth. Her hands moved with a practiced grace. She made a series of quick, precise folds. 1, 2, 3, 4. A few deft creases, transforming the flat square into a small, compact, triangular shape. The committee members Washington, Morris, and Ross watched, likely intrigued and a little puzzled. What was she doing? Then, with the folded paper held firmly between her thumb and forefinger, she took her sharp seamstress scissors. There was no hesitation. Just one single, decisive snip asterisk. A small, angled cut across the folded corner. She let the small, leftover scrap of paper fall away. Then, with a little flourish, she unfolded the piece she held in her hand. And there it was. A perfect, symmetrical, beautiful, 5-pointed star. You can imagine the look on their faces. Surprise, adieu, and perhaps a touch of embarrassment for ever doubting her. With that one simple action, Betsy Ross had not only proven her point, but it also solved their manufacturing dilemma. She had shown them that elegance and efficiency were not mutually exclusive. Her method was so simple, so ingenious, that anyone could learn it. Making hundreds of 5-pointed stars was no longer a daunting task. It was a simple, repeatable process. The committee was completely won over. They immediately agreed to the change. The new American flag would feature 13 5-pointed stars, arranged in a circle, on a field of blue. This moment is more than just a clever party trick. It's a microcosm of the American spirit itself. It embodies ingenuity, the ability to find a simple, elegant solution to a complex problem. It speaks to a can-do attitude, a practical creativity that values both form and function. Betsy wasn't just a seamstress. She was an innovator. She saw a challenge and, instead of being intimidated, she used her skill and intelligence to overcome it. And so, the 5-pointed star became an iconic symbol of the United States. It shines on our flag, on our military uniforms, on our government seals. And every time we see it, we can remember this story, a story of a quiet but confident woman in a small Philadelphia shop who, with a few folds of paper and a single snip of her scissors, left a permanent mark on the emblem of a nation. It is a powerful reminder that history isn't just made by generals on battlefields or politicians in grand halls. It's also made by artisans, by innovators, by everyday people who bring their unique skills and bright ideas to the table. Betsy Ross's contribution wasn't just stitching cloth together. It was contributing to the very identity of America. And the best part, you can do it too. Take a piece of paper right now. Fold it in half. Fold it again. Make a few more specific folds. You can easily find a tutorial online showing Betsy's exact method. And with one snip, you can connect directly with that moment in history. You can hold in your hand a perfect 5-pointed star, just like the one that convinced George Washington. It's a little piece of living history, a testament to the quiet genius of Betsy Ross. Thank you for joining me for this chapter of the story. I hope it gives you a new appreciation for the stars on the flag. Don't forget to like this video, subscribe to the channel, and hit that notification bell so you don't miss our next chapter. We have more incredible stories to share. Until next time, stay curious. Hello and welcome back to our journey through history. In this chapter, we delve into a pivotal moment, a scene filled with quiet determination and the gentle sounds of creation. Picture this: a dimly lit room in Philadelphia, the air thick with anticipation. The flickering flame of a candle dances, casting long, wavering shadows on the walls. Here, a revolution is being stitched into existence, one careful thread at a time. The table is a landscape of vibrant color. Bolts of fabric lie ready, a rich, defiant red next to a crisp, hopeful white, and a deep, steadfast blue. Her hands, though steady, move with a sense of profound purpose. She takes up her shears, the steel cold against her skin. The sound is sharp and decisive as the blades slice through the red cloth, a clean, confident snip that cuts through the quiet of the room. Another cut, and then another, creating bold stripes, each one a declaration. Then, the same for the white, the shears gliding through the fabric, separating bands of purity and innocence. These aren't just strips of cloth. They are the building blocks of a new identity, the very sinews of a nation yet to be fully born. She lays them out, arranging the red and white stripes in an alternating pattern. The geometry is precise, each stripe representing a colony, a voice in a chorus demanding to be heard. Now, the needle comes into play. It's a slender piece of polished steel, its eye waiting patiently. She pulls a long strand of linen thread from the spool, its journey through her fingers smooth and practiced. She weights the end slightly and guides it through the needle SI with an ease born of countless hours of work. A knot is tied small and secure. The real work begins. The first stitch is a small, almost imperceptible act, yet it holds immense weight. The needle pierces the red cloth, then the white, binding them together. Listen closely. Can you hear it? That soft, rhythmic chef as the thread is pulled, taut through the layers of fabric. It's a sound of unity, of disparate pieces becoming a whole. Stitch after stitch, she works, her movements a graceful, repetitive dance. The thread weaves in and out, a whisper of connection, a testament to resilience. Each pull is firm, creating a seam that is both strong and neat. This flag must endure. It must withstand the wind, the rain, and the tumult of battle. It must be as strong as the ideals it represents. As the evening deepens, the candle burns lower. A drop of hot wax sizzles as it falls onto the wooden table. A small, momentary star in the growing darkness. She doesn't flinch. Her focus is absolute, her world narrowed to the point of her needle and the emerging pattern under her hands. The stripes grow longer, a river of red and white flowing from her fingertips. There's a certain magic in the air, the quiet alchemy of turning simple materials, cloth and thread, into a powerful symbol. It's an intimate process, far from the loud debates of congressmen and the clash of armies. Yet, in its own way, it is just as crucial. Now for the canton, the field of blue. This fabric is the color of the midnight sky, a canvas for a new constellation. She measures it carefully, her brow furrowed in concentration. This square of blue represents a union, a promise of a future forged together. She sets aside the long stripes for a moment and turns her attention to the stars. Cutting them from the white fabric is the most intricate part of the task. These are not simple shapes. 5-pointed stars, symbols of heavenly guidance, and distant aspirations. Each point must be sharp, each angle perfect. Her shears move with a jeweler's precision, snipping and folding, creating a small galaxy of white stars on her work table. Arranging the stars on the blue field is like plotting a celestial map. She places them in a circle, a symbol of equality and eternity, with no one star elevated above the others. Each star represents a state, a sovereign entity joining a larger whole. Pinning them in place, she prepares for the final, delicate stitching. This is applique work, requiring a finer touch. The needle, now armed with white thread, dances around the edges of each star, securing it to the blue firm. The sound of the thread is even softer now, a mere whisper against the cloth. It's a slow, meticulous process. As she sews, perhaps her mind wanders. Does she think of the soldiers who will carry this banner? Of the children who will look up to it with hope? Does she understand the full weight of what her hands are creating? The candle sputters, its light growing warmer, softer. The stripes are now joined, a complete field of red and white. The canton is a constellation of pristine white stars on a sea of deep blue. The final assembly begins. She aligns the blue canton with the upper corner of the stripes, the place of honor. Her needle resumes its steady rhythm, stitching the field of stars to the bars of sacrifice and purity. This final seam is the most significant, for it is the one that truly brings the flag to life. It's the moment the Union is physically and symbolically bound to the individual colonies. The quiet chef of the thread is the sound of a nation being born. As she pulls the last thread through and ties the final, secure knot, she holds it up. The candlelight is too dim to illuminate it fully, but even in the flickering light, its power is undeniable. The colors are bold. The design is simple, yet profound. It is more than just a flag. It is a story, a promise, a prayer sewn in cloth. It is a symbol of unity, forged in a quiet room by a pair of determined hands, ready to be unfurled in the winds of change. In the silence of the night, with the scent of beeswax in the air, a symbol was born, ready to inspire a revolution and define a country for generations to come. Thank you so much for joining us for this chapter. The story of this flag is the story of a nation full of quiet courage and intricate detail. If you enjoyed this glimpse into the past, please consider liking this video and subscribing to our channel for more stories. We're grateful to have you with us on this journey. See you next time. In the quiet of a Philadelphia parlor, history held its breath. The air, thick with the scent of beeswax and old wood, crackled with anticipation. Hineta Washington, along with Robert Maurice and George Ross, sat across from Betsy Ross. The room was small, but the moment was monumental. 4 weeks, needles had danced and fabrics had whispered under Betsy's skilled hands. She had taken their concept of vision for a new nation's emblem and woven it into reality. Now, the culmination of her work lay shrouded on a small table before them. Washington, his face etched with the burdens of a long and arduous war, leaned forward slightly. His usual stoic expression was softened by a flicker of hope, a glimmer of curiosity. He had seen the horrors of battle, the sacrifices made in the name of liberty. He understood more than anyone the power of a symbol to unite, to inspire, to give a tangible form to the abstract ideals they fought for. This wasn't just a piece of cloth. It was to be the visual manifestation of the United States of America. With a gently, almost reverent motion, Betsy Ross reached for the covering. Her hands, calloused from countless hours of labor, were steady. She pulled back the simple linen cloth, and there it was. The first flag. It lay resplendent on the dark wood of the table, a sudden and vibrant declaration in the dim light of the room. The colors were so bold, so defiant. A field of deep, resolute blue in the corner, a constellation of 13 brilliant white stars arranged in a perfect circle, and flowing from it, 13 alternating stripes of pure, crisp white and a rich, courageous red. A collective, hushed intake of breath filled the room. For a long moment, no one spoke. The silence was profound, filled only with the weight of what they were witnessing. Washington's eyes traced the lines of the flag from the circle of stars, representing the eternal unity of the new states, to the bold stripes, signifying their original number. Each element had been debated, considered, and now, seeing them together, the design felt inevitable. It felt right. 13 stars, 13 stripes. Washington finally murmured, his voice low and filled with a quiet awe. He wasn't speaking to anyone in particular, but to the flag itself, to the future it represented, a banner for a new republic. The words hung in the air, simple yet carrying the immense gravity of their cause. In that room, with that flag, the abstract concept of a nation, born from revolution and philosophy, finally had a face. Betsy watched them, her heart pounding. She saw the approval in their eyes, but more than that, she saw understanding. They saw what she had intended, not just a military standard, but a promise. The red spoke of the valor and sacrifice that had been given and would still be required. The white of the purity of their ideals and the innocence of a new beginning. And the blue, a vast field of perseverance and justice, holding the stars of the states together in a heavenly, unbroken reign. Robert Maurice, the great financier of the revolution, reached out a hand but stopped just short of touching the fabric. "It is magnificent, Mistress Ross," he said, his voice uncharacteristically soft. "It speaks of everything we are fighting for." George Ross, her late husband's uncle, and the one who had brought her into this secret committee, simply nodded, his eyes shining with pride and emotion. Washington rose from his chair and walked slowly to the table. He looked down at the flag, his gaze intense. He imagined it snapping in the wind on a battlefield, a beacon of hope for weary soldiers. He pictured it flying proudly over state houses and ships at sea, a declaration to the world that a new nation had taken its place among the powers of the earth. This wasn't just a banner to rally troops. It was the standard of a free people. It was the cloth from which the future would be tailored. He finally looked at Betsy, a rare, genuine smile touching his lips. "You have given us a symbol to rally behind, madam," he said with deep sincerity. "A symbol that will outlast us all in that momenta." The flag ceased to be just Betsy's creation. It became theirs. It became America's. It was the first stitch in the fabric of a national identity, a visual promise of e pluribus unum, out of many, one. The first unveiling was complete, and as the flag lay in the quiet Philadelphia parlor, it was already beginning its long journey into the heart of a nation. And the rest, as they say, is history. What a powerful moment to see an idea transformed into something so iconic. It really makes you think about the power of symbols in our own lives. Thanks so much for joining me on this journey back in time. If you enjoyed this story, don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit that notification bell so you don't miss the next chapter. Until next time, stay curious. Hello, history lovers, and welcome back to our deep dive into the story of the American flag. So far, we've explored the myths, the legends, and the incredible tale of Betsy Ross. But now, it is time to separate the story from the historical record and see what we actually know for sure. Let's travel back to the heart of the American Revolution, to the chambers of the Second Continental Congress. Imagine the scene. It's the summer of 1777. The war for independence is raging. The colonies, now states, are fighting for their very existence. They have an army, they have a general, they have a Declaration of Independence, but they don't have a single, unified national flag. Soldiers were marching under a variety of banners, state flags, regimental flags, some even featuring rattlesnakes, with the warning, "Don't tread on me." While inspiring, this lack of a standard emblem was a problem. A national flag was more than just a piece of cloth. It was a symbol of unity, a banner that would represent this new nation on the world stage and on the battlefield. The need for an official standard was becoming more and more apparent. And so, on June 14th, 1777, the Continental Congress, meeting in Philadelphia, took a momentous step. Tucked away in a series of resolutions about the Navy, they passed a short but powerful declaration. This is what we now call the Flag Resolution. It's incredibly brief, but its words would shape American identity forever. It stated, and I quote, "Resolved, that the flag of the 13 United States be 13 stripes, alternate red and white, that the Union be 13 stars, white in a blue field, representing a new constellation. Let's break that down because every part of it is significant. 13 stripes. Alternate red and white. This was a clear nod to the original 13 colonies that had rebelled against British rule. The stripes represented their unity and their collective struggle. The colors themselves were symbolic, though the resolution didn't specify their meaning. Later interpretations would suggest red for hardiness and valor, and white for purity and innocence. It's a powerful visual heritage, connecting the new nation directly to its founding members. Then comes the second part, that the Union be 13 stars, white in a blue field, representing a new constellation. This is just beautiful poetry, isn't it? A new constellation. The delegates weren't just creating a country. They believed they were creating something, a new political star in the sky of nations. The stars, like the stripes, represented the 13 states. But unlike the stripes, they were a union. A single entity formed from many parts, set against a blue field, which would come to symbolize vigilance, perseverance, and justice. This design was a declaration to the world that these 13 separate colonies were now one unified nation, a new and permanent fixture in the world order. Now, here is the most crucial part of this historical chapter, and it's where the story of Betsy Ross gets a little complicated. The flag resolution of 1777 is the only asterisk official, documented instruction from Congress about the flag's design at that time. Notice what it asterisk. Does an asterisk say it doesn't specify the arrangement of the stars? Should they be in a circle, in rows, scattered randomly? It doesn't say. It also doesn't specify the number of points on the stars. Should they have 5 points, like the ones Betsy Ross supposedly suggested, or 6, or even more? The resolution is silent on these details. This lack of specificity is fascinating. It meant that in the years following the resolution, there was a huge amount of variation in how the American flag was actually made. Some flag makers arranged the stars in neat rows, what we call a 3 to 3 to 3 pattern. Others famously arranged them in a circle. The very design Betsy Ross created. This circular design was popular because it symbolized equality. No one state was above another, and the circle was endless. But we also see flags from this period with stars arranged in an arc, or even a starburst. Some flags had 5-pointed stars, while others had 6-pointed, or even 8-pointed stars. This is the key point where historical fact diverges from the popular legend. While the story of Betsy Ross presenting her 5-pointed star, circular design to George Washington is a wonderful, inspiring tale. There's no official documentation from Congress in 1777 that mandates her specific design. The official record only gives us the broad strokes. 13 red and white stripes, and 13 white stars on a blue field. The iconic circular arrangement, while popular and historically significant, was one of several designs used at the time. Its official adoption as the asterisk national standard never actually happened in the way the Betsy Ross story suggests. So, while we celebrate June 14th as Flag Day, commemorating the day Congress passed the flag resolution, we have to remember that a flag maker in 1777 had a lot of creative freedom. They were guided by the spirit of the resolution, not by a detailed blueprint. The image of the Betsy Ross flag with its perfect circle of 13 5-pointed stars is, for us, the quintessential flag of the Revolution. But it was just one beautiful interpretation of Congress's vision of a new constellation. This doesn't diminish the story of Betsy Ross or the power of her legendary design. It just adds a layer of nuance to our understanding of history. The birth of the American flag wasn't a single event, but a process. It was honored by Congress, and then brought to life in various forms by the many skilled, patriotic artisans, men and women alike across the young nation. The Betsy Ross design padrões as the most famous of these, a symbol of Guoming Jinshan, even if its official origin story is more legend than documented fact. Thank you so much for joining me on this journey into the official records. It's fascinating to see where and history intersect. In our next chapter, we'll explore how the flag evolved as new states joined the Union. It's a story Kampatika and design that you won't want to miss. If you're enjoying this series, please hit that like button, and be sure to subscribe and turn on notifications so you don't miss our next episode. We'll see you next time. Hello, history buffs and mystery lovers. Welcome back to our channel. Today, we're rediving deep into one of America's most cherished founding legends, the story of Betsy Ross and the very first American flag. We all know the tale, right? In 1776, a secret committee, including George Washington himself, visits a humble upholstery shop in Philadelphia. They present a rough sketch of a new national banner to a young widow named Betsy Ross. She, with her keen eye and nimble fingers, suggests a key change, swapping the 6-pointed stars for the simpler, more elegant 5-pointed star, which she demonstrates by folding a piece of paper and making a single snip. The committee is impressed, and a legend is born. It's a fantastic story, a perfect little nugget of patriotic folklore that has been taught in schools for generations. It's a tale of a woman's quiet but crucial contribution to the birth of a nation. But what if I told you that this entire iconic scene might be just that? A story. As we unravel Chapter 10 of our series, The Mystery of Proof, we confront a startling historical void. When you go looking for the official minutes, the diary entries, the letters from 1776 that corroborate this meeting, you find nothing. Absolutely nothing. There is no written record from George Washington, Robert Morris, or George Ross mentioning a flag committee visiting Betsy Ross. No government ledger shows a payment to her for creating the first flag. From a purely documentary perspective, one of the most famous moments in American history simply didn't happen. So where did this story come from? It wasn't until 100 years later, in 1870, that the tale was brought into the public consciousness. The person who told it was William J. Canby, Betsy Ross's own grandson. He presented a paper to the Historical Society of Pennsylvania, recounting the story as it had been passed down through his family for decades. He swore that his grandmother had told him and other relatives the story numerous times before her death in 1836. Canby and his family members even signed sworn affidavits attesting to the truth of this oral tradition. They believed it wholeheartedly. It was their family's history, a source of immense pride, and they wanted to share it with the nation during the run-up to the centennial celebration. This is where the real mystery begins. Historians are trained to rely on primary sources, documents, and artifacts from the period being studied. Oral history, especially when recounted a century after the fact, is often viewed with skepticism. Memories can fade, details can be embellished, and family pride can sometimes color the truth. Could the story have been a simple misremembering? Or perhaps an exaggeration that grew with each telling? A small family anecdote that blossomed into a national epic? Skeptics point to several red flags. For instance, the Continental Congress didn't even pass the first Flag Act, which officially described the flag's design, until June 14, 1777, a full year after the supposed meeting with Betsy. Why would Washington commission a flag in 1776 that wasn't authorized until 1777? Furthermore, there are other claims to the flag's design. Francis Hopkinson, a signer of the Declaration of Independence and a member of the Continental Navy Board, actually submitted a bill to Congress for his work designing various government symbols, including, he claimed, the flag of the United States of America. Congress haggled with him over the payment and ultimately refused to pay him in full, arguing he wasn't the sole designer and had been aided by others. But his claim is, unlike Betsy's, documented in the official records of the Continental Congress. This adds another layer of complexity. Was Hopkinson the true designer? Did he work with Betsy? Or are these two separate, competing narratives? And yet, we can't just dismiss the Betsy Ross story out of hand. The absence of evidence isn't necessarily the evidence of absence. The meeting described by Canby was supposedly a secret one. It makes sense that it wouldn't be widely documented, especially during a time of war when secrecy was paramount. We also know for a fact that Betsy Ross was a real person, an upholsterer and flag maker living and working in Philadelphia at the right time. We have receipts showing that she was paid by the Pennsylvania State Navy Board in 1777 for sewing ship-ass colors. So, we can definitively place her in the world of flag making during the Revolution. She was known in the right circles, and her skills were in demand. This places us at a fascinating crossroads. On one hand, we have the weight of documented evidence, which points away from Betsy Ross as the designer of the first Stars and Stripes. On the other hand, we have a powerful, persistent, and deeply held family tradition that places her right at the center of the action. This tradition is so compelling that it has captured the American imagination for over 150 years, cementing her place as a folk hero. Her home in Philadelphia is a national landmark, visited by thousands each year. Her name is synonymous with the flag itself. So, how do we solve the mystery? The truth is, we may never be able to. The paper trail has gone cold. We are left to weigh the probabilities. Is it more likely that a family lovingly preserved a true, albeit undocumented, story for a century? Or is it more likely that a combination of family pride, the patriotic fervor of the 1876 centennial, and the natural evolution of a good story created a legend? The question hangs in the air, as tantalizing today as it was when William Canby first spoke to the Historical Society. It forces us to ask a bigger question about history itself. How do we balance cold, hard documents against the power of human memory and tradition? This is the beautiful, and sometimes frustrating, nature of studying the past. It's not always about finding definitive answers, but about understanding the questions and exploring the different shades of truth. The story of Betsy Ross might not be verifiable history in the strictest sense, but its cultural impact is undeniable. It provides a relatable, human face to the abstract ideals of the Revolution. It gives us a female hero in a story dominated by men. It speaks to the idea that even an ordinary citizen, a seamstress in her shop, could play a vital role in the founding of a nation. So, as we look at the Stars and Stripes, what are we seeing? Is it the product of a bureaucratic committee and a forgotten founding father like Francis Hopkinson? Or is it the handiwork of a clever and persuasive widow from Philadelphia? Is the story of Betsy Ross a beautiful legend, a myth created to inspire? Or is it a truth stitched through time, passed down from one generation to the next, a whisper of history that refuses to be silenced? What do you believe? Let me know your thoughts down in the comments. I'm really curious to hear your take on this enduring American mystery. Thank you so much for joining me on this historical deep dive. If you enjoyed wrestling with the past and exploring its hidden corners, please give this video a thumbs up and consider subscribing to the channel for more content just like this. We have many more chapters to explore together. Until next time, stay curious. Hello everyone, and welcome back to our series. Today, we're diving into a fascinating chapter of American history, one that brings a legendary tale into the light of public record. We're talking about the legacy of Betsy Ross and how her story, the one we all know and love about the creation of the first American flag, was passed down through generations. How did a family story become a national legend? It all centers around one man, her grandson, William Canby. For decades after Betsy Ross passed away in 1836, her contribution to the nation's founding was a cherished, but private, family narrative. It was a story told around the fireplace, a piece of oral history passed from mother to daughter, from grandmother to grandson. Betsy herself shared the account with her children and grandchildren, detailing that pivotal meeting with George Washington, Robert Morris, and George Ross. But to the wider world, she was simply a Philadelphia upholsterer, a respected artisan, but not yet the icon she would become. Her story was a quiet thread woven into the fabric of her family, waiting for the right moment to be revealed. That moment came nearly a century after the flag's purported creation. The year was 1870. The United States was healing from the Civil War and was on the cusp of its centennial celebration. There was a powerful wave of patriotism and a deep interest in the nation's origins. People were looking for heroes, for stories that defined the American spirit. And William Canby, then a man in his late 50s, felt the time was right to share the legacy his grandmother had entrusted to him. He wasn't a professional historian or a public figure seeking fame. He was simply a grandson fulfilling what he saw as a duty to his family and his country. So, in March of 1870, William Canby prepared a paper. He gathered his thoughts, his memories, and the affidavits of family members who had also heard the story directly from Betsy or from her children. He stood before the esteemed members of the Historical Society of Pennsylvania, a respected institution dedicated to preserving the state's rich history. Imagine the scene. A quiet, determined man presenting a story that, until then, had lived only in the hearts and minds of the Ross family. He wasn't just telling a tale. He was submitting his family's history for the historical record. In his presentation, Canby carefully laid out the details as he had learned them. He described how the committee from the Continental Congress visited his grandmother's upholstery shop on Arch Street. He recounted their request for her to sew the first flag, presenting her with a rough sketch. And, of course, he shared the now famous anecdote about the stars. The original design, he explained, featured 6-pointed stars. Betsy, ever the skilled seamstress, demonstrated that a 5-pointed star was not only more aesthetically pleasing, but also far more practical. With a single snip of her folded scissors, she could create a perfect 5-pointed star, a testament to her efficiency and skill. This small but significant detail was a cornerstone of his account. Canby's presentation was met with immense interest. It was a compelling narrative that put a human face on the birth of a national symbol. It wasn't a story of generals and politicians in a grand hole, but of a working woman, a widow, an artisan using her skills to contribute to the cause of independence. This was a story people could connect with. It resonated deeply with the American ideal of the everyday citizen playing a crucial role in the nation's founding. The story quickly captured the public's imagination, spreading through newspapers and magazines across the country. Of course, the story has its critics. Historians point out the lack of contemporary written evidence from 1776, no official records, no diary entries from Washington mentioning the meeting. They argue that Canby's presentation, coming 94 years after the event and based on family testimony, is not concrete proof. This is a valid and important part of the historical discussion. The debate itself is part of the legacy. However, it's also important to understand the context of the time. For a woman, especially a tradesperson like Betsy, official records of such meetings were not common. Her contribution, like that of many women of the era, was often overlooked in official documentation. What William Canby did in 1870 was ensure his grandmother's story wasn't lost to time. He preserved a piece of oral history that speaks to a greater truth about the American Revolution, that it was fought and won not just on battlefields, but in the workshops, homes, and hearts of ordinary people. He wasn't trying to rewrite history, he was trying to complete it, adding a vibrant, personal chapter that had been missing. He presented signed affidavits from his aunt, Clarissa Sidney Wilson, and his cousin, Margaret Boggs, who both corroborated the story as they had heard it from Betsy herself. For Canby, this family testimony was his evidence. The legacy Canby created is undeniable. Because of his efforts, the story of Betsy Ross became an integral part of American folklore and education. For generations of school children, Betsy Ross has been the mother of the American flag. Her home in Philadelphia is a national landmark, visited by thousands each year. Whether every detail of Canby's account is historically verifiable or not, the story serves a powerful purpose. It gives us a heroine. It reminds us that patriotism and nation-building are the work of many hands, not just the famous few. In the end, the Ross family legacy, as presented by William Canby, is more than just a story about a flag. It's a story about memory, family, and the power of a single individual to shape national identity. It is a testament to a grandson's love for his grandmother and his belief in her contribution to the birth of their nation. It sparked a conversation that continues to this day, encouraging us all to look deeper into our history and appreciate the stories that are passed down, not just those written down. Thank you so much for joining me on this deep dive into the legacy of Betsy Ross. I hope you found it as fascinating as I do. What are your thoughts on William Canby's presentation? Let me know in the comments below. And if you enjoyed this video, please give it a thumbs up, subscribe to the channel, and hit that notification bell so you don't miss our next chapter. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you next time. Ever wondered what happened to Betsy Ross after she stitched the stars and stripes? Her story didn't end with that famous flag, in many ways. It was just beginning. Let's dive into the incredible, often overlooked chapters of Betsy's life, a story of resilience, love, and unwavering patriotism that goes far beyond a single needle and thread. After her first husband, John Ross, tragically died, Betsy found love again with a mariner named Joseph Ash. They married in June 1777, right in the thick of the Revolutionary War. Life was a whirlwind of love and uncertainty. Joseph's work at sea was dangerous, and their time together was precious. They had 2 daughters, Zillah and Eliza, but their family bliss was shadowed by the constant threat of war. In 1780, Joseph's ship was captured by the British Royal Navy. He was charged with treason and thrown into the notorious Old Mill prison in England. Can you imagine the fear and helplessness Betsy must have felt? She was at home, running her upholstery business, raising 2 little girls, all while her husband was a prisoner of war across an ocean. The letters stopped, the news was scarce, and all she could do was work, pray, and wait. Then, in 1782, a visitor brought devastating news. It was John Claypool, a fellow sailor, and an old friend who had been imprisoned with Joseph. He sat with Betsy and gently told her that her beloved husband had died in prison from a fever. The news was heartbreaking, but in that moment of shared grief, a new bond was formed. John Claypool had not only brought news of Joseph's passing, he had also brought Joseph's final farewells and messages of love for Betsy and their children. This shared connection to Joseph blossomed into something more. Just a year later, in May 1783, Betsy and John Claypool were married. This marked the beginning of a new, stable, and loving chapter in Betsy's life. John joined her in the upholstery business, and together they navigated the challenges of a post-war America. Their family grew, and they had 5 daughters of their own: Clarissa, Susanna, Jane, Rachel, and Harriet, who sadly died in infancy. Their home was filled with the sounds of a bustling family and a thriving business. But Betsy's patriotism wasn't just a memory. It was a daily practice. Her sewing skills, the very skills that brought her legendary fame, were a vital asset to the new nation. Throughout the war and long after, her shop was a hub of activity. She wasn't just making flags. She and her team of seamstresses were working tirelessly, sewing tents, blankets, and uniforms for the Continental Army. Think about it. Every stitch was a contribution to the war effort, a tangible piece of support for the soldiers fighting for freedom. She was instrumental in outfitting the very army that fought to establish the country her flag represented. After the war, her work continued. She became the go-to seamstress for the new government. Her shop was contracted to create ships' colors, military standards, and official banners for the state of Pennsylvania and the federal government. For over 50 years, Betsy Ross was a government contractor, a female entrepreneur in an age dominated by men, providing the symbols that would define the United States for generations. Her work was a constant, visible thread in the fabric of the early republic. As the years passed, Betsy and John Claypool enjoyed a long and loving marriage that lasted 34 years, until John's death in 1817. Betsy continued to run the upholstery business with the help of her daughters, passing down her skills and her strong work ethic. She lived to see her children and grandchildren grow, her life a testament to enduring strength. She eventually retired in her late 70s, moving in with her married daughter, Susanna. Betsy Ross passed away peacefully in 1836, at the age of 84. She was buried in a Quaker cemetery in Philadelphia, a city she had helped build and define. Her legacy isn't just about one flag. It's about a woman who endured the loss of 2 husbands to war, raised a large family, ran a successful business for 5 decades, and dedicated her life and her craft to the service of her country. She was a survivor, an innovator, and a true patriot from the first stitch to the very last. So the next time you see the American flag, remember the woman behind it was so much more than a legend. She was a mother, a wife, a business owner, and a tireless supporter of the American dream. Her life is a powerful story of resilience and dedication. Thanks so much for watching and exploring this incredible piece of history with me. If you enjoyed this, please give this video a thumbs up. And do UNT forget to subscribe and hit that notification bell so you do UNT miss our next journey into the past. See you next time. Hello everyone, and welcome back to our channel. Today, we're taking a virtual trip back in time, stepping onto the cobblestone streets of 18th century Philadelphia. Our destination is a small but incredibly significant brick house nestled on Arch Street. This isn't just any old building. It's the former home and workshop of a true American icon, Betsy Ross. Today, it stands proudly as the Betsy Ross House, a beloved landmark that draws visitors from all over the world, eager to connect with a pivotal moment in American history. So, grab your tricorn hats, and let's go inside and explore the world where a legend was born. As we approach the house, you can't help but be struck by its modest, yet charming, appearance. This is a classic example of a colonial-era Philadelphia row home. It's just 2.5 stories tall, with a steep-pitched roof and dormer windows peeking out from the attic. The brickwork, laid in a pattern known as Flemish bond, tells a story of craftsmanship from over 250 years ago. Imagine this street bustling with the sounds of horse-drawn carts, the chatter of merchants, and the daily life of a city on the verge of revolution. It was right here, in this very house, that Betsy Ross lived and worked, running a successful upholstery business, a remarkable achievement for a woman in her time. Now, let's step across the threshold. The moment you're inside, you're transported back to the 1770s. The rooms are small and cozy, just as they would have been in Betsy's day. The floorboards creaked with history, and the low ceilings remind us of a time when people were, on average, a bit shorter. The ground floor is where the magic happened. This space served a dual purpose. It was both the family's front parlor and, more importantly, Betsy's upholstery shop. This was her public-facing showroom, where she would have met with clients, displayed samples of fabrics, and taken orders for everything from simple chair cushions to elaborate bed hangings. Look around at the tools of her trade, carefully preserved and displayed. You'll see needles of all sizes, formidable-looking shears for cutting through thick fabrics, and spools of thread in various colors. Upholstery in the 18th century was a physically demanding and highly skilled craft. It involved not just sewing, but also furniture, construction, weaving, and an expert eye for design and color. Betsy was a master of it all. She inherited the business after the tragic death of her first husband, John Ross, and managed it with skill and determination. This room wasn't just a workshop. It was a symbol of her independence and her entrepreneurial spirit. Let's head to the back of the ground floor. Here we find the rear parlor, which would have been the heart of the home's private life. This is likely the very room where, according to legend, history was made. Picture it. In late May or early June of 1776, 3 distinguished gentlemen arrive at Betsy's shop. They are George Washington, the commander-in-chief of the Continental Army, Robert Morris, a wealthy financier of the Revolution, and George Ross, a respected statesman and the uncle of Betsy's late husband. They came with a special request, a secret and urgent commission. They presented her with a rough sketch of a flag for the new nation they hoped to create. The story goes that their original design featured 6 pointed stars. Betsy, ever a skilled artisan, demonstrated how a 5-pointed star was not only more aesthetically pleasing, but also much easier to cut with a single snip of the scissors. She supposedly folded a piece of paper and, with one deft cut, produced a perfect 5-pointed star. Impressing the committee, while historians debate the exact details of this meeting, this room is preserved as the legendary birthplace of the American flag. Standing era, you can almost feel the weight of that historic moment, the quiet intensity of a secret task that would shape a nation's identity. Now, let's make our way upstairs to the 2nd floor. These were the private living quarters. Here you'll find the bedrooms, which were simple and functional. The furniture is sparse by modern standards, consisting of a rope bed, a small chest for clothes, and perhaps a washstand. It's a vivid reminder of the simplicity of daily life in the colonial era. There were no walk-in closets or ensuite bathrooms. Life was lived in these few, intimate rooms. This is where Betsy would have rested after long days in the shop, where she raised her children, and where she endured the hardships and celebrated the triumphs of her long life. It paints a picture of a resilient woman balancing her demanding work with her family responsibilities, all while a war for independence raged just outside her door. Let's climb one more flight of stairs, up to the attic. This small space under the eaves served multiple purposes. It was likely used for storage, and perhaps as sleeping quarters for apprentices or journeymen who worked in the upholstery shop. The small dormer windows would have provided just enough light to work by. It's in these cramped, humble spaces that we get a true sense of the working-class life in colonial Philadelphia. The Betsy Ross house wasn't a grand mansion. It was a place of work, a place of family, and a place where an ordinary citizen played an extraordinary role in the nation's founding. As we come back downstairs and out into the courtyard, we can reflect on what this house represents. It's more than just bricks and mortars. It's a testament to the contributions of women in the American Revolution. It's a monument to craftsmanship and entrepreneurship. and it's a tangible link to the story of our flag, a symbol of unity and freedom recognized around the globe. The Betsy Ross house preserves the story not just of a flag maker, but of a resourceful, resilient, and patriotic American woman. It reminds us that history is often made not by generals and politicians alone, but by everyday people who answered the call of their time. Thank you so much for joining me on this tour of the incredible Betsy Ross's house. It's a place where you can truly touch history. If you ever find yourself in Philadelphia, I highly recommend a visit. What did you find most interesting about Betsy's home and workshop? Let me know in the comments below. And if you enjoyed this journey back in time, please give this video a thumbs up, subscribe to our channel, and ring that notification bell so you won't miss our next historical adventure. Until next time, stay curious. Hello everyone, and welcome back to our historical journey. Today, in Chapter 14, we're witnessing how a simple symbol, born in the heart of revolution, takes flight to become an enduring emblem for a growing nation. We're talking, of course, about the American flag. We left off with Betsy Ross and the legendary creation of the first Stars and Stripes. That flag, with its 13 stars in a circle and 13 stripes, represented a brand new nation, a united front of 13 colonies declaring their independence. It was a symbol of hope, a promise of liberty. But as we know, America didn't stay at 13 states. The story of the flag is the story of America's growth, written in thread and fabric. So, how did we get from 13 stars to the 50 we see today? It wasn't a straight line. The first change came in 1795. Two new states, Vermont and Kentucky, had joined the Union. Congress passed the Second Flag Act, which decreed that the flag would now have 15 stars and 15 stripes. This is the very flag that flew over Fort McHenry during the War of 1812, inspiring Francis Scott Key to write the Star-Spangled Banner. For a time, it seemed the plan was to add both a star and a stripe for every new state. But you can imagine the problem. As more states joined, adding a stripe for each one would have made the flag look, well, a bit like a colorful barcode. It would have become unwieldy and lost its clean, iconic design. By 1818, 5 more states, Tennessee, Ohio, Louisiana, Indiana, and Mississippi, joined the Union, bringing the total to 20. The 15-stripe flag was now out of date, and a decision had to be made. This led to the third and final Flag Act of 1818. This was the brilliant compromise that gave us the flag we recognize today. The act stipulated 2 key things. First, the number of stripes would be returned to the original 13, forever honoring the 13 founding colonies. This was a crucial decision, grounding the flag in its revolutionary origins. Those 13 stripes would always remind us of where we came from. Second, the act declared that a new star would be added to the blue canton for each new state that joined the Union. This new star would be officially added on the 4th of July, following the state's admission. This was ingenious. It created a living, evolving symbol. The flag could now grow with the country, a celestial map of the nation's expansion, without sacrificing its original design integrity. And so, the journey began. From 20 stars in 1818, the number steadily climbed. Imagine being a child in the 19th century, watching the flag change several times in your lifetime. A new star wasn't just a piece of fabric. It was a headline. It represented new territories, new people, and new resources joining the American experiment. You had the 24-star flag for Missouri's admission in 1822, the 29-star flag when Texas joined in 1845, the 34-star flag during the heart of the Civil War, representing a union that, despite the conflict, President Lincoln insisted was still whole. Each new star was a statement of unity and progress, a stitch in the ever-expanding tapestry of the nation. Think about the visual evolution. The arrangement of the stars wasn't standardized at first. You'd see stars in circles, stars in a larger star pattern, or simply in rows. It wasn't until 1912, with the admission of Arizona and New Mexico, that President Taft issued an executive order specifying the arrangement of the 48 stars in 6 neat rows of 8. This brought a new level of uniformity to the symbol. This 48-star flag would have a long and storied life, serving for 47 years through 2 world wars and the Great Depression. 4 generations of Americans, This was the asterisk flag. It was raised at Iwo Jima and planted on the beaches of Normandy. Then came the final updates, well within the memory of many people today. In 1959, Alaska joined the Union, and the 49-star flag was introduced. It featured 7 rows of 7 stars, but its reign was short-lived. Just 1 year later, in 1960, Hawaii became the 50th state. This led to the design we have today. The 50 stars are arranged in a pattern of 5 rows of 6 stars, alternating with 4 rows of 5 stars. This design was actually the brainchild of a 17-year-old high school student from Ohio named Robert G. Heft. As part of a history project, he designed the 50-star flag in 1958, anticipating Hawaii's statehood. He got a B on the project, but his teacher said if his design was adopted by Congress, he'd change the grade to an A. Well, Robert sent his design to his congressman, and out of thousands of submissions, his was chosen by President Eisenhower. And yes, his teacher kept his promise and changed the grade to an A. So, from 13 stars in a circle to 50 stars in a complex grid, the flag has physically changed 27 times. Yet, the spirit of Betsy Ross's creation has not only endured, it has been strengthened. The red still symbolizes hardiness and valor. The white, purity and innocence. The blue, vigilance, perseverance, and justice. And the stars, once representing a small cluster of colonies, now represent a vast and diverse nation. A constellation of 50 states united as one. The flag is more than just a piece of cloth. It's a living document. It's a symbol that flew at the birth of the nation, was torn, and bloodied during its greatest internal conflict, was raised in triumph on foreign shores, and was even planted on the moon. It has wrapped the caskets of heroes, and is saluted by schoolchildren every morning. It's a symbol of both our history and our future, a constant reminder of the motto E pluribus unum, out of many, one. The journey of the flag is the journey of America. And just as the nation continues to evolve, its most cherished symbol stands as a testament to that incredible, ongoing story. Thank you so much for joining me today. I hope you found this chapter of our history as fascinating as I do. If you enjoyed this video, please give it a thumbs up. And don't forget to subscribe and hit that notification bell so you don't miss our next chapter. We'll see you next time. Have you ever looked at a simple piece of cloth and felt a surge of emotion? A tear in your eye? A lump in your throat? A fire in your heart? Today, we're diving deep into Chapter 15, exploring the profound power of symbolism, using one of the most potent symbols of all, a flag. A flag is so much more than threads and dyes. It's a story woven into fabric, a promise carried on the wind. It's a silent poet, speaking volumes without uttering a single word. When we see it ripple against the sky, we're not just seeing colors. We're seeing the soul of a nation, the dreams of its people, the echoes of its history. First and foremost, a flag is a symbol of unity. Think about it. It's a single banner under which millions, from all walks of life, can stand together. It transcends our differences, whether they be in background, belief, or lifestyle. It reminds us that despite our individual stories, we are part of a larger narrative, a collective tapestry. When a team raises its flag at the Olympics, the whole country celebrates as one. When a community flies its flag after a tragedy, it's a quiet declaration. We are together in this. We are one. This single emblem becomes a gathering point, a visual handshake that connects strangers and turns them into kin. It's the thread that stitches a diverse population into a single, cohesive family. Then there's liberty. The flag is a constant, fluttering reminder of the freedoms we cherish and the sacrifices made to secure them. It represents the right to speak our minds, to choose our own path, to live without fear of oppression. Each star, each stripe, each color can be seen as a testament to the battles fought for these very principles. It's a symbol of the struggle and the triumph, the long, arduous journey toward a more just and free society. When we pledge allegiance to it, we're not just honoring a piece of cloth. We're reaffirming our commitment to the ideals of liberty and justice that it embodies. It's as a promise to ourselves and to future generations that we will continue to protect and uphold these precious freedoms. And perhaps most powerfully, the flag is a beacon of hope. In our darkest hours, in moments of doubt and despair, it flies as a resilient symbol of a brighter tomorrow. It represents the unwavering belief that we can overcome any challenge, that we can rebuild from any ruin, that our best days are still ahead. It's the hope of a child looking toward the future, the hope of an immigrant seeking a new beginning, the hope of a soldier fighting for peace. It's a silent anthem of optimism, a visual prayer for a better world. It catches the first light of dawn and holds it, promising that even after the longest night, the sun will rise again. This is the magic of symbolism. It takes an ordinary object and imbues it with extraordinary meaning. It allows us to communicate complex ideas and deep emotions in a single, powerful image. A flag is unity, liberty, and hope, all stitched together. It's a visual poem that speaks directly to the heart, reminding us of who we are, where we come from, and where we are going together. It's the quiet strength that binds us, the vibrant dream that guides us, and the enduring promise that inspires us. It proves that sometimes the most powerful things in the world aren't spoken, they're simply shown, felt, and understood. Think about the symbols in your own life. What gives you a sense of unity, a feeling of freedom, a surge of hope, a family photo, a cherished piece of jewelry, a drawing from your child? These personal flags are just as powerful, weaving the story of your own unique journey. They are the anchors in our personal storms, the lighthouses guiding us home. They remind us that our lives, too, are rich with meaning, stitched together with threads of love, resilience, and endless possibility. So the next time you see a flag, take a moment. Look beyond the fabric and see the story. See the unity. See the liberty. See, hope. See the incredible power of a symbol to move the human spirit. Thank you so much for joining me on this journey into the heart of symbolism. If this resonated with you, please hit that like button, share it with someone who might appreciate it, and subscribe for more deep dives into the stories that shape our world. I'd love to read your thoughts in the comments below. Until next time, stay curious. Hello, history buffs, and welcome back to our deep dive into the story of the American flag. So far, we've explored the popular, almost mythical tale of Betsy Ross. It's a story we all know and love. A story of a patriotic seamstress, a secret committee, and the birth of a national symbol in a small Philadelphia upholstery shop. But as with any good story from history, it's our job to look closer, to ask the tough questions, and to see what lies beneath the surface. Today, we're stepping into the world of historical inquiry as we explore Chapter 16, Skeptics and Scholars. Now, the story of Betsy Ross sewing the first flag is powerful. It's an image that has been immortalized in paintings and passed down through generations. But when historians put on their detective hats and start looking for hard evidence, the trail goes surprisingly cold. The biggest challenge to the Betsy Ross legend is a simple but profound one: a lack of contemporary documentation. There are no official records, no government minutes, no letters, no diary entries from 1776 or 1777 that mention Betsy Ross being commissioned to create the first stars and stripes. The story, as we know it, seems to emerge much later. In fact, the tale was first brought to public attention in 1870, nearly a century after the event supposedly took place. It was Betsy's own grandson, William Canby, who presented a paper to the Historical Society of Pennsylvania, recounting the story as he'd heard it from his grandmother and other family members. He presented affidavits from family members who swore they'd heard the story from Betsy herself. This is what we call oral history or family tradition. And while oral history is incredibly valuable for understanding the past, historians generally require corroborating evidence, especially for an event of such national importance. Without a paper trail from the time, it's difficult to verify the claim with certainty. Think about it. A secret committee visiting a seamstress to create the nation's most important symbol sounds like something someone would have written down, right? The silence in the historical record from that period is deafening, and it's the primary reason why many scholars remain skeptical. So, if there's no concrete proof for Betsy Ross, what other possibilities are there? This is where the story gets even more interesting. It turns out, Betsy wasn't the only flag maker in Philadelphia at the time. The city was a bustling hub of artisans, and there were several other women known for their needlework and flag-making skills. Women like Margaret Manny, Rebecca Jung, and Anne King were all active seamstresses in Philadelphia, and some even had documented records of sewing flags for the state of Pennsylvania or for the military. For instance, there are receipts showing Rebecca Young was paid for making flags. This doesn't mean she made the first one, but it shows that the idea of one single, designated flag maker might be an oversight. It was more likely a collective effort, with many hands contributing to the flags our young nation needed. The focus on a single hero often overshadows the contributions of many others who were just as patriotic and just as skilled. And then there's the story of Francis Hopkinson. This is a name you might not have learned in school, but it's crucial to this conversation. Hopkinson was a delegate from New Jersey to the Continental Congress and a signer of the Declaration of Independence. More importantly, he was a talented artist and designer, and we have actual documentation for his claim. Hopkinson submitted a bill to Congress in 1780, asking for payment for several designs he created for the new nation. What was on that list? He explicitly claimed credit for designing the flag of the United States of America. He also designed the Great Seal of the United States and other currency. Congress debated his payment, not because they doubted he designed a flag, but because he was already a public servant, and they argued he wasn't entitled to extra pay for that work. He never got the cask of wine he asked for his payment, but his claim is the strongest. Most documents supported one we have for the design of the original flag. This shifts the narrative, doesn't it? The story might not be about who sewed it first, but who designed it first. So where does this leave our beloved Betsy Ross? Does it mean her story is a complete fabrication? Not necessarily. It is entirely possible that Betsy Ross was one of the many seamstresses in Philadelphia who made flags for the new republic. She was a known upholsterer and had done sewing work for the Continental Army before. It's plausible she was involved in making early versions of the Stars and Stripes. The part of the story that historians question is her specific role in designing the flag and being the sole creator of the very asterisk. First *1 in that famous meeting with Washington. The legend likely grew over time, blending fact with folklore, turning a patriotic artisan into a national icon. It's a fantastic story that captures the spirit of the revolution, but it might be more of a legend than literal history. This brings us to a really important point about how we engage with history. It's not about just memorizing names and dates. It's about thinking critically, weighing evidence, and understanding that some parts of the past are murky and open to interpretation. The Betsy Ross story is a perfect case study. It forces us to ask, what's the difference between history and memory, between documented fact and cherished tradition? Why do we, as a culture, gravitate towards simple, heroic narratives? Perhaps the story of one woman creating the flag is more emotionally satisfying than the more complex reality of committees, designers, and multiple seats. The legend of Betsy Ross teaches us about American values, patriotism, and the power of a good story. The historical inquiry into her legend teaches us how to be better students of history, to be curious, to be skeptical, and to appreciate that the past is often more complicated and fascinating than the simple stories we retold. It doesn't diminish her role as a patriotic woman of the Revolutionary era. It just places her within a more accurate and complex historical context. Thank you so much for joining me on this journey into the scholarly side of the American flag story. It's a testament to how history is a living, breathing thing that we continue to explore and understand in new ways. What do you think? Does the lack of evidence change how you see the Betsy Ross story? Let me know your thoughts in the comments below. And if you enjoyed this critical deep dive, please give this video a thumbs up. And make sure you resubscribed so you don't miss the next chapter in our series. Thanks for watching, and see you next time. Welcome back to our series, where we peel back the layers of history to find the stories that define us. Today, in our final chapter, Truth and Legend, we're not just looking for facts and figures. We're searching for something deeper, something that resonates even when the historical record falls silent. We've journeyed through the dramatic tale of a Revolutionary War heroine, a story filled with bravery, quick thinking, and a midnight ride that rivals any you've heard before. But now we face the big question. Did it all really happen exactly as the stories say? Historians have debated this for generations. They've scoured archives, letters, and military records, and the concrete, verifiable proof-a-kind that satisfies a rigorous academic standard is elusive. We don't have a signed letter from a general confirming the event, nor a diary entry from the woman herself, detailing her every move. The trail, in many ways, has gone cold, leaving the story hovering in that fascinating space between documented history and beloved folklore. And you know what? That might be the most powerful part of this entire saga. Does the absence of a perfect paper trail invalidate the story's meaning? Absolutely not. Because this legend, whether 100% fact or a blend of memory and myth, speaks a profound truth about the American Revolution, a truth that official records often overlook. It speaks to the countless, often anonymous, contributions of women. Think about it. History, for centuries, was written by men. About men. Battles, generals, and politicians dominated the narrative. But a war isn't just fought on the battlefield. It's fought on the home front, and the whispers passed between neighbors, in the fields tended while men were away, and in the quiet, courageous acts that never made it into a general's report. Women were spies, messengers, nurses, and suppliers. They managed farms, businesses, and families under the constant threat of war. They were the backbone of the rebellion, the invisible engine that kept the fight for independence running. This story, this legend of our heroine, gives a face and a name to that vast, unwritten history. It condenses the bravery of thousands of women into one powerful, unforgettable narrative. She becomes an avatar for every woman who risked her life for the cause of liberty. When we hear of her daring ride, we're not just hearing one woman's tale. We are hearing the echo of every wife who passed intelligence to the Continental Army, every daughter who mended a soldier's uniform, and every mother who kept the flame of hope alive through the darkest years of the war. The legend serves as a crucial historical placeholder. It fills a gap in our collective memory, reminding us that the fight for freedom was not exclusively a male endeavor. It challenges the traditional, top-down view of history and insists that we look closer into the homes and communities where the revolution was truly lived. It's a powerful teaching tool, a way to introduce young people to the idea that heroes come in all forms and that courage is unlimited to the battlefield. Perhaps the story grew over time. Maybe details were embellished as it was passed down from one generation to the next, told around firesides and in town halls. That's the nature of oral tradition. But the core of the story, a woman's courage and her decisive impact on the war effort, remains. This core is the undeniable truth. The legend persists because it feels true, because it represents a reality we instinctively know existed, even if we can't footnote every single detail. In a way, questioning whether every single detail is provable misses the point. The endurance of a story is, in itself, historical evidence. It shows us what past generations valued, what stories they chose to tell their children, and what kind of heroes they wanted to remember. They chose to remember a woman of action, intelligence, and unwavering patriotism. They chose to elevate her story to the level of legend because it embodied the very spirit of the revolution they held so dear. This isn't about accepting fiction as fact. It's about understanding that legends carry their own form of truth. They carry the emotional truth of an era. They capture the spirit, the values, and the struggles of a people in a way that a simple list of dates and events never could. The legend of our heroine is a testament to the resilience and bravery of revolutionary women. It's a vibrant, essential piece of the American tapestry, woven from threads of both fact and folklore, but telling a story that is, in its heart, undeniably true. Her courage, and the courage of the countless women she represents, is the real legacy. And that's a truth no one can dispute. Thank you so much for joining me on this incredible journey through history and legend. It's been an honor to explore these stories with you. If you've enjoyed this series and want to see more content like this, please consider hitting that like button and subscribing to the channel. It truly helps us continue to bring these fascinating tales to light. We'll see you next time. As the whirlwind of the American Revolution settled into the steady rhythm of a new nation, the life of Betsy Ross also found a new, quieter tempo. The woman who had stitched the first threads of a nation's identity now turned her focus to the fabric of her own family and community. This is the story of her final years, a gentle epilogue to a life lived with quiet courage and enduring patriotism. After the war, Philadelphia. The city that had been the backdrop for so much of her life's drama began to heal and grow. Betsy continued her upholstery business, a trade she had mastered and that had sustained her through personal loss and national turmoil. Her shop on Arch Street was more than just a place of business. It was a fixture in the neighborhood, a testament to her resilience and skill. Friends and neighbors knew her, not just as the legendary flag maker, but as a diligent craftswoman, a devout Quaker, and a pillar of her community. She had outlived 3 husbands and had weathered the storms of war and epidemic. Now, her days were filled with the hum of the needle, the chatter of her daughters, and the laughter of grandchildren. She passed on her skills, teaching her daughters and granddaughters the intricate art of sewing and upholstery. Imagine the scene. Several generations of women gathered together, needles flashing, sharing stories and creating beautiful things with their hands. It was in these domestic moments that Betsy found her greatest peace. She was building a different kind of legacy now, one woven not with the grand threads of national destiny, but with the intimate, strong fibers of family love. Her faith remained a central part of her life. As a member of the Society of Friends or Quakers, Betsy had joined the Free Quakers, a group that broke away to support the Revolutionary War effort, a stance that was contrary to the pacifist principles of the main Quaker body. In her later years, she continued to worship with this community, finding spiritual solace and fellowship among those who shared her unique journey of faith and patriotism. Her beliefs were a quiet but firm anchor, guiding her actions and providing comfort through the many trials she had faced. As the 1820s dawned, the world was changing rapidly. The young republic she had helped birth was growing, stretching its limbs, and finding its voice on the world stage. Figures from the revolution were passing into legend, their stories becoming the foundational myths of the United States. And slowly, Betsy Ross's own story began to be told more widely. Her grandson, William Canby, would later become the primary chronicler of her famous flag-making meeting with George Washington. In her lifetime, while not yet a national icon, her contribution was known and respected within her circle and her city. She was a living link to the nation's founding moments. However, the passage of time also brought personal challenges. As she entered her 70s, Betsy's eyesight, which had been the source of her livelihood and her art, began to fail. For a seamstress, this was a particularly cruel blow. The fine details of needlework, the precise stitches that had defined her craft for decades, slowly blurred and faded from her view. One can only imagine the frustration and sadness she must have felt as this essential part of her identity was taken from her by age. Yet, true to her character, Betsy did not succumb to despair. She retired from the upholstery business in 1827, at the age of 75, passing it on to her daughter, Susanna. Even with her failing vision, she remained engaged with the world around her. She would sit in her chair, perhaps near a sunny window in the Arch Street house, and listen. She would listen to her daughters read from the Bible or the newspaper, listen to the sounds of the bustling city outside, and listen to the stories and laughter of her growing family. Her final years were spent in the loving care of her children and grandchildren. In 1834, now completely blind, she moved out of the city to Abingdon, Pennsylvania, to live with her married daughter, Jane. Here, surrounded by the quieter sounds of the countryside, she lived out her remaining days. The sharp, determined woman who had debated design with generals was now a gentle matriarch, her world defined not by sight, but by sound, touch, and the presence of her loved ones. Think of her in those last years. A woman who had seen a nation born, who had contributed to its very first symbol, now living in a world of darkness, yet filled with the light of family. Her hands, once so nimble and sure with a needle, now rested in her lap. But there were hands that had done important work. They had sewn for a family, for a community, and for a country. They had felt the texture of history. On January 30th, 1836, at the age of 84, Betsy Ross passed away peacefully in her sleep. It was a quiet end to an extraordinary life. She was laid to rest, initially at the Free Quaker Burial Ground in Philadelphia. Her life had spanned the final years of colonial rule, the fire of revolution, and the first half-century of the American experiment. Betsy Ross's story is not one of a battlefield general or a political philosopher. It is the story of an ordinary citizen, a working woman, a widow, and a mother, who, when called upon by history answered with the skills she had. She represents the countless unsung patriots who contributed in their own ways, whose names are not always in the history books, but whose efforts were just as vital. Her final years remind us that after the great history-making moments, life goes on. There is dignity in work, solace in faith, and enduring strength in family. As we reflect on her peaceful passing, we are not just saying farewell to one woman, we are honoring a gentle patriot whose legacy is stitched into the very fabric of America. She was a quiet revolutionary, whose needle and thread were her instruments of change, and whose long, resilient life stands as a testament to the enduring spirit of the nation she helped to create. Thank you so much for joining us on this journey through American history. If you found this story as moving as we did, please consider liking this video and subscribing to our channel for more explorations into the lives of the people who shaped our world. We'd love to hear your thoughts in the comments below. Until next time, take care. Welcome back to our series, where we unravel the threads of history. Today, in our final chapter, we explore how one woman's story, woven with skill and spirit, became an enduring part of America's national tapestry. This is Chapter 19. From Legend to Legacy, the story of how Betsy Ross transformed from a Philadelphia upholsterer into an American icon. How does a local artisan become a household name, a symbol of patriotism taught to school children for generations? The journey of Betsy Ross from historical figure to legendary icon is as fascinating as the flag story itself. It wasn't an immediate ascent to fame. For nearly a century after her passing, her story remained largely within her family, a cherished piece of oral history passed down from mother to daughter, from generation to generation. The turning point came in 1870. As the nation prepared to celebrate its centennial, there was a surge of patriotic fervor and a hunger for stories that captured the spirit of the revolution. It was in this climate that Betsy's grandson, William Canby, presented a paper to the Historical Society of Pennsylvania. He shared the family account he had heard from his grandmother and aunts, the tale of a secret committee, a visit from General Washington, and a determined seamstress who not only stitched the first flag but improved its design. Canby's narrative struck a chord. It was a simple, powerful, and deeply personal story. It gave a face and a name to the creation of the nation's most sacred symbol. Suddenly, Betsy Ross wasn't just a seamstress. She was a founding mother. The story spread like wildfire, captured in magazines, speeches, and soon in the hearts of the American people. Why did this particular story resonate so deeply? It's because it embodies the very essence of the American ideal. It's a story about an ordinary citizen, a working woman, who contributes in a significant, tangible way to the birth of the nation. She wasn't a general or a politician, but her contribution was just as vital. She represents the idea that every American, regardless of their station, has a role to play in the great American experiment. Her needle and thread were her tools of revolution. The image of Betsy Ross, sitting in her upholstery shop, snipping a 5-pointed star with a single fold of her scissors, became an iconic scene. This detail, a demonstration of her skill and ingenuity, was particularly powerful. It suggested not just craftsmanship, but cleverness and confidence. It showed her meeting the Founding Fathers as an equal, a collaborator who wasn't afraid to offer her own expert opinion and improve upon their design. As the 19th century gave way to the 20th, Betsy's legend was cemented in American culture. Artists like Charles H. Weisgerber painted romanticized depictions of the famous meeting, with a dignified Betsy presenting the finished flag to an impressed Washington, Franklin, and Maurice. His painting, Birth of Our Nation's Flag, became one of the most reproduced images in American history, hanging in schools and public buildings across the country. It visually locked the story into the national consciousness. Textbooks began to include her story, introducing millions of young students to the patriotic seamstress of Philadelphia. She became a fixture in school plays and patriotic pageants. Children dressed as Betsy, carrying needle and cloth, marching in 4th of July parades. She was a relatable hero, a role model of quiet patriotism and skilled hands-on contribution. The U.S. government itself embraced her legacy. In 1952, The post office issued a 3-cent commemorative stamp honoring the 200th anniversary of her birth. The stamp featured a portrait of Betsy alongside her famous house on Arch Street and the iconic circle of 13 stars. This was a federal stamp of approval, literally, elevating her story to an officially recognized part of the American narrative. Her home in Philadelphia became a national shrine. The Betsy Ross house is one of the most visited historical landmarks in the city, drawing tourists from around the world. Walking through its narrow halls and small rooms allows visitors to step back in time, to imagine the life of a working woman in the 18th century, and to connect with the legend in a physical space. The house itself became a symbol of her enduring legacy, a brick-and-mortar testament to her story. Of course, with fame comes scrutiny. Historians have long debated the specifics of William Canby's account. They point to the lack of contemporary written evidence. No journal entries from Washington, no official records from Congress commissioning the work from Betsy specifically. They argue that the story, while beautiful, might be more folklore than verifiable fact. But perhaps that misses the point. The legend of Betsy Ross isn't just about historical accuracy. It's about national identity. Legends and myths are the stories a culture tells itself to explain who it is and what it values. The story of Betsy Ross values ingenuity, hard work, and the contributions of everyday people. It teaches that patriotism is unlimited to the battlefield or the halls of Congress, but can be found in a workshop, in the skillful hands of a citizen. Whether she stitched the very first flag or not, the historical Betsy Ross was undeniably a real and remarkable woman. She was a successful business owner in a time when that was rare for a woman. She was a patriot who supported the revolutionary cause, and she was a flag maker, providing numerous banners for the Pennsylvania Navy. Her life, on its own, is a testament to the resilience and spirit of the revolutionary generation. The legend that grew around her simply amplified that spirit, creating a powerful and lasting symbol. Betsy Ross became a stand-in for all the unsung heroes of the revolution, the women, the artisans, the ordinary people whose collective efforts forged a new nation. Her legacy is not just in a single flag, but in the inspiration she provides. She reminds us that history is made not just by famous men, but by countless individuals whose names we may never know, but whose contributions are woven into the very fabric of the country. And so, from a family story whispered through generations to a national symbol honored on stamps and in parades, Betsy Ross's journey is complete. She is more than a historical figure. She is a part of America's soul. Her legend continues to teach us that the threads of a nation's story are held in the hands of all its people. Thank you so much for joining me on this incredible journey through the life and legend of Betsy Ross. It has been a privilege to share her story with you. If you've enjoyed this series, please consider liking this video and subscribing to our channel for more deep dives into the stories that have shaped our world. We appreciate your support more than words can say. Until next time, stay curious. Hello, street enthusiasts, and welcome back to our final chapter. We've journeyed through the bustling, revolutionary streets of Philadelphia, followed the scent of gunpowder and the fervent whispers of independence, all through the eyes of one remarkable woman, Betsy Ross. We've stood in her upholstery shop, heard the snip of her shears, and felt the determination in every stitch she made. But now, we arrive at the end of her tale. A story that has become as much a part of American folklore as the stars and stripes themselves. As we stand at the crossroads of documented history and cherished legend, the question lingers, suspended in the air like a needle poised over fabric. Did Betsy Ross truly sew the very first American flag? The honest, scholarly answer is that we can't say for certain. The paper trail, the definitive, undeniable proof that historians crave, is elusive. The meeting with George Washington, Robert Morris, and George Ross, that pivotal moment described by her grandson, William Canby, decades later, exists in the realm of family tradition, passed down through generations, but not in the official records of the Continental Congress. So, where does that leave us? Does the lack of a receipt or a congressional minute unravel the entire story? Not at all. Not at all. In fact, it invites us to look deeper, beyond the singular act, and into the powerful symbolism that the story represents. The absence of concrete proof doesn't erase Betsy Ross. It transforms her. She becomes more than just a seamstress. She becomes an emblem of the countless ordinary citizens who contributed to the birth of a nation in ways big and small. Let's consider the context of her time. Philadelphia in 1776 was the very heart of the revolution. It was a city electric with ideas, danger, and opportunity. Betsy Ross, a recent widow who had been disowned by her Quaker family for marrying outside her faith, was an independent businesswoman in a world overwhelmingly dominated by men. She was known for her exceptional skill. Records show she was paid by the Pennsylvania State Navy Board in 1777 for sewing ships' colors or flags. This isn't a maybe, it's a fact. She was a flag maker. She was in the right place, at the right time, with the right skills. The story, as told by Canby, places her in a room with the future president, demonstrating her practical knowledge. The detail about changing the 6-pointed star to a 5-pointed one, not just for aesthetic reasons but for efficiency, showing she could snip it from a single fold of cloth, is on just a charming anecdote. It's a testament to a craftswoman's ingenuity. It speaks of a practical mind, a problem solver, a contributor, not just a passive order. This is the Betsy Ross that is so compelling. She's not just sewing. She's collaborating in the design of a national symbol. Whether that specific flag was the asterisk's very first asterisk, stars and stripes, is where the legend and history blur. The flag resolution of June 14, 1777, was vague, stating that the flag of the 13 United States be 13 stripes, alternate red and white, that the Union be 13 stars, white in a blue field, representing a new constellation. It didn't specify the arrangement of the stars, or the number of points. Many flags were being made by many different hands, all across the colonies. It's plausible, even probably, that Betsy Ross was one of those flag makers, her needle and thread working to bring this new constellation to life. But the power of the Betsy Ross story isn't shackled to a single piece of cloth. Its true strength lies in what it represents. It's a story of female contribution in a narrative so often dominated by founding fathers. In an era when women's roles were largely confined to the domestic sphere, Betsy Ross emerges as a professional, a patriot, and a key participant in the revolutionary cause. She gives a face and a name to the silent, tireless work of the women who supported the revolution from their homes and shops, who ran businesses while their husbands were at war, who nursed the wounded, and who, yes, sewed the uniforms and the banners that an army marches under. Her story filled a void. As the United States grew, it needed more than just generals and statesmen for its founding mythology. It needed heroes who felt accessible, who looked and sounded like the everyday people building the country. A skilled, widowed upholsterer from Philadelphia fit that role perfectly. She became a symbol of American ingenuity, patriotism, and the quiet, essential work that builds a nation. The tale of her meeting with Washington captured the public imagination in the lead-up to the 1876 Centennial Exposition, a time when America was healing from a civil war and was desperate for unifying symbols of its origin. The story of Betsy Ross helped stitch the nation back together, reminding people of their shared revolutionary roots. Think about it this way. The flag itself is a collection of symbols. The stripes represent the 13 original colonies. The stars represent the states, a new constellation. The colors red for hardiness and valor, white for purity and innocence, and blue for vigilance, perseverance, and justice. The flag is a story told in fabric. The tale of Betsy Ross is no different. It's a story told through a person, woven from threads of historical fact, family lore, and national need. It speaks to the idea that greatness isn't limited to the battlefield or the halls of government. It can be found in a workshop, in the deft movements of a needle, in the quiet determination to create something lasting and beautiful. The flag she is said to have sewn, with its circle of stars, is a powerful symbol in itself. A circle has no beginning and no end. It implies equality, unity, and perpetuity. Each star, each state, is equal in the ring. It's a beautifully democratic design, and attributing its creation, or at least its refinement, to a citizen artisan like Betsy Ross reinforces that democratic spirit. It says that the nation was built not just by a few great men, but by the collective effort of its people. So, as we bring our story to a close, Let's step back from the heated debate of did she or didn't she, and appreciate the larger truth the legend offers. Let's remember Betsy Ross, not as a contested historical footnote, but as a powerful and enduring American icon. She represents the grit of a small business owner, the courage of a patriot in a city under threat, and the skill of an artisan whose work gave visual form to a nation's highest ideals. Perhaps history cannot confirm her needle touched the first flag. Perhaps the definitive proof will remain forever lost to time, like a thread that has come loose and drifted away. But that doesn't diminish the power of her story. Through the tale of Betsy Ross, the threads of courage, craftsmanship, and freedom are woven together into a narrative that has inspired generations. Her legend has become a part of the flag's story, a stitch that binds the fabric of the past to the hopes of the future. And in that, her legacy will forever wave. Thank you so much for joining me on this incredible journey through history. If you've enjoyed this series, please consider liking this video and subscribing to the channel for more stories like this one. Your support means the world to us and helps us continue to bring the past to life. Until next time, stay curious.